Hey, it's Johara. Welcome back to my channel, to Johara Loves TV. So I'm going to do a video where I talk about the 10 Disney Channel ships that should have lasted more than one episode. And maybe both characters or one of the characters were in more than one episode, but it is only if they only dated that one episode. And so these are based off the ships that I liked that only lasted one episode. And so number one will be the couple I liked most, which I really think should have ended up together. And I know number 1 and 2 on my list took me a minute to decide which one I liked better, because I did really love those two ships and I thought they both should have lasted until the end. Actually, I thought that's who they should have ended, the main character should have ended up with, but oh well. And I'm gonna one of these was and I'll explain how I decided to come up with this once I get to that ship, because one of these ships actually made me think about this video. But let's just get right into it, shall we? So number 10 is Zach and Violet from Suite Life on Deck. So Violet was only on the one episode, and that one is more understandable to why they didn't last more. And I'm not the biggest fan of Zach. I did like Zach with Maya, so I don't necessarily wish they would have, because I think Maya's really the only girl for Zach, because she saw right through his whole facade and his whole charade, whatever you want to call it. And she didn't fall under his spell like a lot of girls, which I don't understand, because if I was straight, I would go for Cody. I mean, he's sweet, he's smart, he's considerate, he's gentle, he's just... This is what I never understand about girls. You want to be happy, yeah, you go for the bad boy and not the good one that would treat you right? What? And they're twins too, so they look alike, so it can't be appearance-wise. Anyways, moving on from that little rant. But I did like Zach and Violet together because of their storyline in that one episode. I thought it was sweet that Violet came from this rich family and her whole family seemed to be snobs, including the guy her mom wanted her to be with, and only for his money. And but she was immediately smitten with Zach when he ran in front of her to dodge the cake, because the guy that I'm not really sure if they were actually technically dating. Not Violet and Zach, the other guy. I can't remember his name for the life of me, even though I saw this episode not that long ago, actually. But Zach, he hid behind Violet so that he wouldn't get hit by the cake. But Zach jumped in front of her so that he would end up getting hit by the cake instead of her, which she thought was really sweet. And so she was smitten with him immediately afterwards, and she invited him to dinner with her family. But her mom really liked that one guy, and Zach was also, he's not. I don't know how to explain Zach, but I'm sure you've seen Sweet of Zach Cody if you're watching this, so you probably understand Zach. And he's just not exactly the dinner with Queen of England type. So yeah. But it was obvious that Violet liked Zach and not the guy her mom wanted her to be with. So it was interesting to watch that. And Zach and they ended up spending some time together. Violet decided to spend time with Zach and see what life with him was like. And she never worked a day in her life, so he told her what to do because he was working. And then, they showed several things that they did throughout the day. Like he drew a picture of her, and I really like that little conversation, because he said it doesn't do you justice, and she said she loved it, and she made a comment about the monkey behind her. She was like, that's me, and she was like, well, that doesn't do you justice, which was a really sweet comment. But yeah, they had a really nice day. He was for once a gentleman and offered to get her coat from her room because she was cold, which also gave her boyfriend, or they're not technically dating, I don't think. They're just, her mom just wanted them together, but he ended up using that to frame him for for stealing the necklace that he had given her earlier on during that dinner party they were having. But they discovered that he actually stole it because one of the gems was in his pocket, and Ivana, London's dog, had found it. So Zach ended up chasing him and fell in the hot tub, and then he did this whole dramatic thing about drowning because like he fell overboard, this and that, but he was just in the hot tub, so he was just like, stand up. But then they hugged, and yeah. At the end of the episode, it showed Violet throwing the necklace that one guy had given her out to sea. But that was the end of them, you know. This one is more understandable why it didn't last more than one episode, because they were on a ship and it was a one-time cruise. It's not like they would be able to find each other once they got off the cruise, once Zach was off the cruise anyways, and it's not like, it's very unlikely that they even lived in the same area to boot. So it's understandable why it only lasted one episode, and obviously it's number 10, so I wasn't too brokenhearted about it, because like I said, I did prefer Zach with Maya. I feel like because Maya just didn't take his crap, you know, she will call him out on his behavior, which most girls did, and honestly, I think Zach needs someone like that, someone who will call him out as behavior, who won't take his playerness, or whatever you want to call it, who just wouldn't take it for, you know, just would not deal with it. And I think that's who Zach needs, so that he can be held accountable for his actions for once, you know. But anyways, moving on. Number 9, I have Maddie and Trevor from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I think I have 4 from that entire franchise. 2 from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, 2 from Sweet Life on deck. I guess there's a lot of couples I think should have lasted longer. Oh well. Maddie and Trevor. Trevor was played by Zac Efron, and they technically they didn't date because Trevor was going out with London because she really liked him. But he was a scholar. She was, well, not. So she decided to pretend to be a scholar, and Maddie would feed answers to her in her little chip thing she had in her ear. And but then when London and Trevor were talking, Maddie heard some things he was saying and did not like him. So the two of them ended up yelling at each other, going off on one another, and then all of a sudden they started making out. They would yell at each other how much they hate each other again, start making out again. And it's far up on my list because it's definitely not my favorite Disney Channel ship. I mean, none of these are my favorite. My favorites are probably the ones that actually did last more than one episode, but but I know the ones that take place at number 1 and 2 are pretty high up on my list, and I do think should have lasted more than one episode a lot, obviously. But anyways, back to Maddie and Trevor. But I just thought they were cute and their little hatred, but you know, but at the same time they were attracted to each other enough to kiss. And I also find it funny because, you know, of everything from High School Musical, since Troy never liked Sharpay, and then on here they ended up actually making out, which is all Sharpay ever wanted. Which I find hilarious because they actually did do. I mean, there's a whole episode dedicated to High School Musical where they did a play, and then Sharpay was like, people say I look just like, Maddie was like, people say I just look just like Sharpay, and it was like, I can't see it. And then they have several High School Musical stars on there. I know Martha was on a couple episodes. Gabriella and Taylor were on a few episodes. And then Troy was just on the one. But yeah, so... But I just like that scene. I thought it was funny. They're just yelling at each other, and then start making out. Number 8, I have Justin and Miranda. They're from Wizard Place. Miranda was on a really early episode, like the first few episodes, I'm pretty sure she was on. And Justin wanted her to be his first kiss, but something kept happening to mess it up, so Alex kept doing a spell to rewind time to give him the chance to do it over and over again, but it was taking a lot of turns to do it. And Miranda was played by Lucy Hale, who is my favorite actress and singer, but I didn't know who she was when I first saw this episode, so I didn't know that that was her, obviously. I didn't even know who she was until I watched Pretty Little Liars, and I fell in love with her character, and then I started seeing other things she was on, like Truth or Dare, Fantasy Island, and then I found out she was actually on bits and pieces from, like, she was on this episode, she was actually on, like, 5 minutes of Drake and Josh, just 5 minutes, though, and then I listened to some of her songs, and I fell in love with her. Yeah, she's and she became my favorite actress and singer because she's really good. But yeah, but I thought it was cute that Justin just wanted it to be perfect, and yeah, so number 7 is London and Luca from Sweet Life on Deck. On this episode, they were in Rome, and London met Luca. He was playing the guitar and he was really good, and he came up with this, and he did this whole sob story about how his father didn't want him to do music, this and that, and London ended up paying for his schooling or whatever, and when she left, they agreed to meet up later, but turns out it was all just a scam, and which Bailey found out when she overheard him talking to his father, but London wouldn't listen to her, and so she went to meet up with him, and he never came, but then Luca came out of hiding because he really did end up liking her. He fell for her, but and then Bailey went off on him, which was really funny, and the two of them, along with Mr. Mosby, come up with a scheme to try and scam his father and give London her money back. London admitted that she never cared about the money. Money to her isn't, much of anything because, well, she's stinking rich, and she's, like, one of the richest people alive. So, but the two of them were happy because they could be together, but that one's also a little understandable why it didn't actually happen after that episode because, well, he lives in Rome, and after she graduated from whatever it was called. I forgot what it's called now. But when she graduated from high school and got off the boat, she'd probably go back to Boston. So yeah, that one's understandable. But she could always move to Rome. But even though I did like them and wish they would have lasted more than one episode, I'm glad I never wanted them to end up together because London will be on here later on in the list. With who I did think she should end up with. So yeah. Number 6, Miley and Trey from Hannah Montana. Now this is actually the episode that got me thinking about doing this list because when I saw the two of them together and remembered how Trey was only on that one episode, I was like, there's probably several couples on Disney Channel that were only on one episode that should have been on more. So I decided to make the list, and yeah, but Miley and Trey, she met him at the beginning and she instantly liked him, but then she lost him and couldn't find him, and she was all upset about it because she thought he was her soulmate, even though they only lasted that one episode, which I find hilarious. But he ended up coming back because he ended up thinking about her and liking her and asked her out, and they ended up going on to dinner with his parents, and she was originally going to try to talk off fancy because his family's really rich, and she was afraid they wouldn't like her, but then I think Lily was the one that said that she should be herself and this and that. So she did end up going to be herself, but the entire dinner was a disaster because they kept saying stuff about her being a hillbilly and her southern accent being from Tennessee and this and that. And so she took them to her house to meet her dad and brother, and they had decided to get all gussied up and pretend to be, something else. And but then things get even more wrong, and she ends up going off on them and basically kicking them out. And Trey ends up wanting to stay because he really liked Miley. He didn't care about her background or being a hillbilly. And his dad was like, "You disappointed me, son." And he was like, "I could say the same thing for you." So the two of them left, and Trey ends up having fun with them at dinner with these kind of stuff they eat. Like they end up having, I want to say hamburgers or cheeseburgers, something like that. And he was surprised that they actually ate that with their hands. Because he's never had that, because, I don't know. But yeah, so I really liked them together, and they inspired me for this list. But sadly, they did not make the top 5, because when I was making this list, I realized there were some couples I did like more than them, but still some couples that wasn't as good as them, which is why they're only number 6. Now we're in the top 5. The top 5 couples that should have definitely lasted more than one episode. Actually, these 5 I definitely wanted to end up together. Last one I wanted to end up together. Like some of these I didn't really want to end up together. I just think they could have been cute if they lasted more than one episode, Like Zach, I did want him to end up with Maya. Maddie, I don't really think there was anyone I liked her with that much. So if she ended up with Trevor, that would have been okay, but still not the cutest couple. Justin, I definitely like him with Juliet. So definitely not Miranda. London, we'll get to that when we get to her other option down later, because that's the guy I wanted her to end up with. And then with Miley, I liked her with Trey, and I think it could have been cute, but I liked her with Jake, before they ruined it by having him cheat on her, which I think that was stupid. They only did that to have her end up with Jesse, which I didn't really like her with Jesse. So yeah. But number 5, we have Ty and Tinka from Shake It Up. So Gunther had asked Ty to go on a date with Tinka because she saw romance everywhere, and she really wanted to know what it was like to go on at least one date. And Ty didn't want to at first, but then he had convinced her. I think he paid her, and so he agreed. And at first he thought it was going to be disastrous, but when he saw Tinka, she was really pretty, and turns out she knew what Gunther had done, and she says she doesn't care. She just really wanted to go on a date. And so the two of them did go on a date, and we got to see them dance and have a really nice conversation, and and they end up really enjoying each other's company and liking each other. And Ty admitted he would like to go on another date, and she said that they were too opposite, too different, which a lot of times opposites attract. So I think it could have worked, and it would have been interesting because, Ty would be in the middle of Tinka and Rocky's feud, because Tinka and Rocky hated each other, but then Ty is Rocky's brother and Tinka's boyfriend. That could have been really interesting. But yeah, they only lasted in one episode, sadly. But I definitely think they should have ended up together. Next, number 4, we have China and Hudson from Ant Farm. And Hudson is actually played by the person who played Ty on Shake It Up. So he made this list twice technically, but he was on the very last episode. So as far as we know, they could have went on to dates afterwards, but they were still only on technically that one episode, and I did like them together. They were in New York, and Ty, or I called him Ty. What? No, wrong character. Same actor, wrong character. Hudson was a dancer and a rapper, and he ended up lying about being on the streets, but then him and China end up talking and saying, and she said that he needed to do his own thing and do this whole song, and he even had a verse in it, and they were really good together during the song, and I liked the song. And then at the end of the episode, when they were back home at the school, Ty ended up coming because he ended up being a rapper prodigy. So yeah, and so they did leave it off for the potential of the two of them to get together. But they still did technically only last one episode, so they count. But at least that one we kind of have an idea that they could have ended up together, so it puts our minds a little bit more at ease for this couple. Number 3 is Joey and Willow from Liv and Maddie. So Willow liked Joey throughout the series, but Joey never really liked her back. But then when she was going to leave for college, when she graduated high school, he started thinking of her as more, and he was like, I could have had this whole sweet high school sweetheart thing, but I ruined it. And so he did this entire cute thing for Willow. He ended up becoming Willow's high school sweetheart and doing a whole high school worth of stuff with her. Like, they went on their first date, he took her to prom, he fought for her, he asked her out, obviously, because you have to have that. He did all these things for her, meeting the parents. It was all so sweet. But then she did end up having to go. But then they all end up having to go to the same place she was in, which I still thought was stupid. I think Liv and Maddie should move there, and then they could have went back and forth from Liv and Maddie, where they were, and then everyone else to where they live, because, I just thought that's what they should have done. But okay. And but anyways, you did find, and then they end up you finding out that they broke up. So you find out that technically they did date throughout the summer, but they end up breaking up. But they still technically only dated that one episode because we never got to see it except for in a flashback. So I'm saying it counts because this is my list. Anyways, it turns out it was a big misunderstanding, but they still decided to be just friends. It wasn't much of a misunderstanding, just they were doing the entire thing, the date thing and all of that over and over again because they didn't want to ruin what they had. They were afraid that if they continued, it would ruin, so they decided to be just friends. But yeah, and I still think that they should have continued to date because they were cute in those 5 minutes we got to see them. Number 2, now we're on the top 2. London and Todd. I told you that London will come back. So on Sweet Life, Zack and Cody, London ended up meeting Todd, who was the son of St. Mark, the owner of the St. Mark Hotel. And their hotels were rivals, which we got to see several episodes, including we got to see their manager several episodes. I can't remember her name, but she played on Sabrina the Teenage Witch as Hilda, if any of you have seen that. But, and she's not exactly the nicest person either. But, they weren't allowed to see each other because their fathers hated each other, but they decided to sneak around anyways, and they gave each other little romantic gifts and stuff too, it was kind of like supposed to be a Romeo and Juliet thing. I mean, the episode was called Cooking with Romeo and Juliet because of the cooking storyline with Cody and Zach. But anyways, I slammed the heel of my foot to my chair and that hurt. Okay, moving on. Where were we? London and Todd. The two of them were definitely cute, and I definitely wanted to see more of them. They ended up, they did get a couple kisses in there, but his dream was to be a dentist, and his dad was against it. But then his dad agreed to pay for dentist school. But that was only because this way he wouldn't get to see London, and he'd rather his son be a dentist than to see London Tipton. So, but he told right before that, Mr. Mosby had told her that he wasn't going to get in the way of their relationship because he realized how much London liked Todd. And she said, when you get in trouble, and he was like, when you love someone, you put their happiness before your own. And then when London and Todd were talking, he was saying he was going to give up the dentist school to be with her, and she couldn't let him do that. So she explained that when you love someone, you put their happiness before your own. So Todd ended up going to study school, but promised to return once he graduated or whatever. Yeah, but he never came back. I really thought it would have been cute if in the last season what's it called? Sweet Life on Deck, if he would have come back and they could have been together for the remainder of the show. But no, they couldn't have done that, could they? But I guess it made sense that he didn't come back because, like, how would he know they were on leave? Unless they stayed in touch. That would have been an interesting twist to find out that they had stayed in touch all this time. I would have loved that. And then he could have come on board the ship and they could have been together the remainder of the series. Now I really want that to happen. Why could you let that happen? Moving on. Number 1 is Cece and James from Shake It Up. Now the two of them were so good. James was technically in 2 episodes, but he only dated Cece in 1. The first episode you see him in, Cece and Rocky's test scores had been mixed up, so Cece had the really high one and Rocky had the really low one. So until they could get it situated, they had them switch classes. So Cece was in the smart ones and Rocky was in the not so smart classes. And in the smart classes was James. He was highly intelligent and didn't think Cece belonged in those classes. So he wasn't exactly the nicest guy when he first came on the show, but he definitely, but then at the end of the episode, Cece had gotten upset that no one thought she could do it, especially him, so she proved everyone wrong by working hard and actually doing good and in that class. So he apologized and said he was wrong about her, and then he does come back shortly after, and he has a crush on Cece, so he asked her out, and the two of them she decides to try to be all highly intelligent for him. He decides to try to be more laid back and cool for her, and they realize that they both try to change for each other. But they realized that they liked each other for who they were, and they originally said that them being opposites is why they could work, because opposites attract. But then at the end of the episode, they're like, maybe we're just too opposite, which is kind of against the whole point in the first place. And I just think they should have ended up together. And I still don't understand like the whole future episode where you find out she ends up with that one guy. I can't remember his name now. That's gonna bug me. But that one guy that she hated, that dated Rocky for a short time, find out that he was her husband, and that I don't understand, because they did hate each other. I mean, I do like a good enemies to lovers, so if they would have shown it more, like actually, like by the end of the show, actually shown their hatred for each other die down and them to actually start to care for one another, then I might be able to ship it. But since we actually didn't get to see that transition, and all we know is that it does happen in the future, I'm not so thrilled with it. And I did really like Cece and James. I love the idea of her being, laid back and cool, and him being all highly intelligent, a bit more sophisticated, and the two of them working like that. But sadly, they decided not to go that route, which I think they should have, because I think they could have been a great couple. So yeah, that is all for my list. Please like and subscribe and comment your Disney Channel ships that you think should have lasted more than one episode, because there's several, and we will discuss below, and I'll talk to you guys later.